So I said South Africa as a country is doing better, okay, than Nigeria as a country. But when it comes to toe, Nigerians against South Africans, I think South Africans are smarter. That's why I think Nigerians are smarter. That is my own opinion. They don't talk about the positive contributions that Nigerians have made to their society, but they just lump all the Nigerians together and they say, oh, all of you are drug dealers. All of you are this. All of you are that.
Why is that so important for Africans? Why do we find it so important to compare ourselves with other people, but also pervade that we are superior than other African people? You know.
I've seen situations where I will talk about African unity, and a lot of South Africans will comment on, then go and unite in your own country. Why can't you unite in your own country first? We don't want to unite. We are fine as we are. As we have Nigerians in South Africa, we have more than 16,000 South Africans in Nigeria. They've never for one day been called kwere. They've never for one day been blamed for Nigerian economic problems. Africans on Africa. Let's go.
So, if you are an African or if you are living within African spaces, you might be aware of the a bit of a tense relationship that has been there between African countries. Specifically, we have seen the shade that has been thrown from Zimbabwe to South Africa, Zimbabwe, Uganda, South Africa, and Nigeria. But also part of what has been happening within that conversation and dialogue is that we've had people that have been commentators on that space. And today, Thabiso and I are pleased to be sitting with Coach Ade to talk about relations on the African spectrum as a whole, but also other things that fall within the dynamics of being African within the African continent. Coach Ade is from Nigeria and he is a life coach, a TikToker, but also I like his commentary on the social dynamics that happen within the African continent, which I am excited to get into as well. So before Coach Ade introduces himself, I'm just gonna play a short clip of something that I found on him on TikTok, and then he's gonna introduce himself. Then we're gonna get into the conversation from there. Let me just play this short clip so that those who don't know Coach Ade can also know Coach Ade and also can get an opportunity to follow him on TikTok as well.
The hate South Africans have for Nigeria, the level of hate South Africans have for Nigeria has nothing to do with drug dealing. Has nothing to do with that. If it had something to do with that, all the Nyaupe sellers who are South Africans would have been arrested by now. It has nothing to do with their destroying our children. It has nothing to do with that. If that's the fact, the Nyaupe that is being sold by South Africans, black South Africans, colored South Africans that are destroying the children would have been tackled. So it has nothing to do with that. What the hate South Africans have for Nigeria basically has to do with continental superiority and rivalry. It has to do with continental rivalry. In a situation whereby you believe that South Africans believe that the economy and the country the white South Africans built happens to be the superpower of Africa. And they believe that there is no other country like them because they are the greatest on the continent. And to see another country being declared as
okay, I'm gonna pause it there because there's another one that I just wanted to play a bit of just to get the flavor going. Then we can start the conversation.
South Africans have flashy names that they call immigrants from Africa. They have a lot of flashy names that they give to immigrants from Africa. The names range from Magrigamba, Kwere, Maputo, Gongongon. Currently, there's another one called Jollof. Now, here's the thing. The name Kwere stands out. And here is the origin of Kwere. Kwere stems from the fact that when a lot of migrants from African origin started coming into South Africa to help extract the mineral resources from beneath the earth to help extract the gold and the diamonds. Yeah. So they find out, the South Africans found out that they could not understand their languages. So they said their languages sounds like quere, 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 quere. So because their languages were funny to them, and they were not intelligent enough to try to learn more about them. These are the people that are helping you to develop your countries by helping you to mine your natural resources. But they just gave them a nickname, Kwere Kwere. Now, Kwere Kwere is supposed to be a derogatory name for anybody that is from Africa that is in South Africa. But the people from Europe and the Americas are given the name tourists. But any black immigrant, no matter how intelligent, no matter how powerful, no matter how rich, to a black South African, is a Kwere Kwere. And the name Kwere Kwere stands out. And one thing I observed about that name Kwere Kwere is that most times, listen carefully, most times, the people that are being called Kwere Kwere are actually much better looking, more civilized, more educated, more advanced, more hardworking than the people that are calling them Kwere Kwere. Just rewind and listen to that statement again. So I am Kwere Kwere.
I like the part where you say rewind and listen to that again. Welcome to the podcast, Coach Ade. Can you please introduce yourself to the people? I guess there's already so much to talk about, but please introduce yourself to the viewers of the podcast, and then we can get into the conversation in a bit more detail.
My name is Adekunle Amao. I'm a 50-year-old man. I would say I'm a pensioner, and that has just taken interest in TikTok, basically. I'm an educator as well, and a child psychologist. I will stop with that introduction there.
So much to talk about there and so much to think about. Maybe starting from the video that we saw. Tabiso, maybe you can chime in here from to kick off things.
Yeah, so thanks for joining us today, Coach Ade. And thanks for sharing those videos, Ivan. I think just for context for people who may be watching for the first time, I'm South Africa and Ivan is Zimbabwe. We talk to people from all over the continent. And I suppose what I want to start with is why do you make these videos?
All right. That's a very good question. I've been stayed in South Africa for 20 years before I moved back to Lagos. I enjoyed staying in South Africa. I think it's one of my favorite places on the planet. But while I was in Nigeria, while I'm still in Nigeria, I noticed this Chidima story. And I started reading up about it and getting myself familiar and acquainted with the story. And I began to see the kind of backlash and hate and everything this child was going through. And a lot of people had so many things to say. And that was when I said, no, I need to get to TikTok and set these people straight. And that was why I joined TikTok. And that was why I started making and pushing those contents.
Yeah, I think so the public discourse that people have all the time can sometimes be like quite combative. I was reading the comments on the video that Ivan shared just now, and I mean, you say you lived in South Africa. I'm wondering about something. Like, if I look at, I'm wondering about something. If I look at other countries, and how they treat Nigerians. Let's talk about like Nigeria specifically, right? Do you think the problems that you raised in those videos are unique to South Africa? Because I'm thinking about, there was a time when the UAE banned visas for Nigerians. I know, for example, it's really tough for Nigerians to get visas to fly to the US and many other countries actually. You look at all of these documentaries and investigations into like scammers. I know it's an old stereotype and there's scammers from everywhere, but a lot of it is like Nigerians, and I wonder, do you think in your thinking, in your experience, do you think this is a uniquely South African thing?
I find it's quite interesting because everybody always chooses to believe the negative side of Nigerians. You can have more than 200 million people and not have bad ones as well. So the reason why people concentrate on Nigeria and Nigerians because of our population and the fact that we migrate a lot. So in a scenario whereby you have 10,000 Nigerians in the country and two of them commit a crime, then the whole country gets stigmatized. And I've noticed from my travel, because I'm well traveled myself, I've been to over 26 countries. I've noticed from my travels that people form opinion from what they hear and what they deduct from other people, what other people are saying. It's not that they had a personal encounter with Nigeria. I say, yes, it's unique to South Africa. There are some countries here, you talk about the UAE ban. You see, here's the thing, okay? When it comes to competing with Nigerians or against Nigerians, a lot of Africans and all Arabs, they tend to have problems because an average Nigerian is good at what they do. When you see a Nigerian professional, he professes what he claims to profess very, very well. And when you say Nigerian criminal, he criminalizes, he does his criminal activities very, very well. Now, the thing is, they focus on the criminals and use them as a base to actually label all Nigerians. And that is what I have a problem with. If you go to in every South African university, you find Nigerian professors in every South African university. Some of the best doctors, I know a neurosurgeon, and I also know a cardiologist in South Africa, and they are some of the best neurosurgeons and cardiologists in South Africa, and they are my personal friends. They are from Nigeria. In the US, Nigerians are the most successful and most educated immigrant groups in the US. You can Google that. So the fact of the matter remains that Nigerians are doing very well all around the world. So the fact that some people just decide to choose the behavior of a few criminals and label Nigerians as so, that is their problem. That has nothing to do with me. But I will not take responsibility of the actions of a few criminal Nigerian elements. I will not take responsibility for that. I know myself. I've never spent a day in a police cell. I've never spent a day in this detention. I'm 50 years old. And throughout the time I was in South Africa, the only time I went to a police station was to certify my documents. Yeah.
I I'd, I'd like to push back a bit on that, and quite something that I found fascinating from your videos was one of the things that you do with your videos is you started your videos when the Chidima thing started, and part of the transition that I saw within your videos is that as they start, at least from my side, yes, you bring out that point of the point that you're trying to make, but it also seems like, as you are saying, Nigerians in some cases are taken on the negative. It seems like maybe you flirt with that line of doing that with South Africans as well. Like I can give examples of you saying things like South Africans, you see why great 30% pass rate doesn't work. South Africans don't think, as an example. I think there's a statement that you said where you said something along the lines of, let me read this. Also, South Africa is doing better than Nigeria, but South Africans are not doing better than Nigerians. Nigerians are smarter, right? Sorry, I didn't write that well, but I think you meant South Africans are doing better. South Africa is doing better, but South Africans are not doing better than Nigerians. Nigerians are smarter. And like, I'm just thinking of that statement. Doesn't it fuel that thing that you're trying to say where, for example, people say Nigerians are criminals, and then you say, oh, but South Africans are stupid, as an example, or South Africans are not learned because of the 30%. Because I've also worked with a lot of South Africans who are very intelligent, some of whom did not even pass matric.
Wow, that's a good question. That's a good question. Basically, good questions. Now, my point there is South Africa as a country currently is doing better than Nigeria as a country. If you look at the GDP, and if you look at the policies that are being put in place right now, South Africa as a country is doing better. And we can argue and say because of the influence of the white South Africans or the Europeans, which is not supposed to be like that. We can't say that our country is doing better because white people are there. Is it that we can do better as Black people by ourselves? Okay, that is an indictment on Black people, but it's a fact. Okay, so I said South Africa as a country is doing better. okay, than Nigeria as a country. But when it comes to toe, Nigerians against South Africans, I think South Africans are smarter. That's why I think Nigerians are smarter. That is my own opinion. And you can see from some of the developments, like look at our music industry, Nollywood. I mean, our movie industry, Nollywood.
But I think that's where my contention is. You see, that's why I said your videos when they start, I'm like, yes, but in the middle, it's like, why do we have to stand toe to toe? Isn't this the conflict that we are having in Africa? I don't know. I'm just trying to think about it as if we start to compare, yes, like if we start to compare and Nigerians is, yes. So that's where I'm trying to understand.
Okay. Discovery is the first step to recovery. Discovery is the first step to recovery. The moment you feel like you're better than anyone else, and it's called subconscious ignorance. You feel like you're better than everyone else, but people look at you, there's nothing special about you. But in order for us to have a meaningful conversation, I have to set you straight. I have to know where you stand. I have to let you have the correct estimate of your relative importance. And that is what I've been doing. I know I've been generalizing a little bit in my video. I'm not the type to generalize, yeah? But I know I've been generalizing, and that is on purpose. Is to kick this conversation started. You see, because they always generalize about Nigerians. They don't talk about the positive contributions that Nigerians have made to their society, but they just lump all the Nigerians together and they say, oh, all of you are drug dealers. All of you are this. All of you are that. So if I have to look at that, the way we are being generalized, I said, let me try and generalize this on these people and let me see how they react. And they've been reacting very well. I can see the reaction. And that is the plan, to get this conversation started. So if you believe that some South Africans are educated and not all of them, based whatever they do on their 30% pass, then you have to believe that some Nigerians too are not criminals. A lot of Nigerians are doing very well. A lot of Nigerians are contributing positively to the South African society, paying their taxes and law abiding. So the generalization, it was an intentional act to keep this conversation started. That's it.
Don't you think that so do you think it'll be fair if someone comes to you and says, I understand that you're doing it to aggravate people, but sometimes someone might come and say, but coach, so you're contradicting the point that you said, because now you're putting Nigerians as superior, because South Africans, because in your video you said South Africans have the supremacy that they have of thinking that they are a superior culture to Africa, but now you are positioning Nigerians as superior as well. But I get what you're doing. You're doing it to aggravate people, which I get, which I'm only getting now from your explanation, Tabiso.
Yeah, I think let's get to the gist of the conversation, man. I hear you say Nigerians look better and they're smarter or whatever. Look, it's all subject. Everybody thinks their own people are better than everybody else. Fine, you can think that. I have nothing against people who think, highly of their self-importance, and maybe some people need it. What I do want to ask you about is, what you just explained, right? You're saying South Africans generalize, and it's not just South Africans. I have to disagree with you about this being a uniquely South African thing. But I can argue that it's a uniquely Nigerian thing, because of all the examples we talked about is people being against Nigerians. And I want you just explain why you generalize, but at the same time you're against South Africans, for example, in this case, generalizing when it comes to Nigerians. Do you think the way you're going about it is helpful at all? And I'm asking this not as I think it's wrong. No, I'm very curious about your intentions. If the point is, like you said, you get the conversation going. Let's be honest. Anybody can get a conversation going about anything if they do it in a way that's really emotionally charged and gets people riled up, right? And a very particular niche or group of people. And I think you've got that niche, that group of people. People who use words like "amakwerekwere," right? You've got those people. Obviously, they're going to respond. They're going to get charged, whatever. But do you think ultimately the way you're going about it is helpful at all, because to me, those videos, and I've only seen those videos are just what South Africans who hate Nigerians also do. The videos that are done around the world by people who hate Nigerians. Right? It's what I'm trying to say is, we've got the meat. The meat is already there, and I don't think you're adding anything.
Well, I said I wanted to get conversation started with those videos, and I got the conversation started. I had people on my live that wanted to engage me on this, my videos and my contents, and we got together on live and we had conversations. And at the end of the day, we ended up smiling. And at the end of the day, they had the correct estimate to their relative importance. So for me, okay, it's a good way of getting things started. And I ruffled feathers a bit. I know. But deep down in me, I don't believe one human being is superior than the other. But what I believe is, because of the pressure that we go through in a country of 220 something million people, and the competition we go through to get jobs and to get the basic needs, it has helped us to develop certain adaptive features that help us to thrive as Nigerians anywhere we go through. Too. Maybe you can say it's experience, but you have to agree. Most countries where Nigerians are, they are doing very well. A lot of Nigerians are actually doing much better than the locals there. I'm not saying because we are more intelligent. I'm saying because of the competition that we're exposed to in Nigeria, that we take that mind outside when we migrate, and we take it and we use it to succeed. So I'm not saying every Nigerian is successful, but I'm saying most Nigerians in the diaspora are doing very well. So the fact of the matter is, I think my content is getting important conversations started, and it's bringing people together to discuss serious issues. And we're actually doing that, and we're getting to the bottom of stuff. I made a South African contributor to my life to accept the fact that only few Nigerians are involved in the drug business. Before, he believed that almost every Nigerian was. So it was my video that brought him to engage me, and he came to understand, and he became educated as a result. So I think it's the right way to go about it. Yeah.
Look, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I think I can I understand why that's the way you're going about it. I'm also thinking about, like, if you think about other countries that experience similar stereotypes, right, and discrimination, like your Colombia, for example, or even Mexico, right, about them being drug dealers, etc. There is absolutely value in some sort of education, maybe public discourse, but there's also, what I don't know, there's also a bad way to go about it. There's a good way to go about it, and sometimes I do wonder if we're ever actually engaging with the right people, because when I think about it, and Ivan and I have been talking to people about this and like interviewing people, when I think about it, there are people out there who just have hate, right? And things that happen, like Chidima, for example, are just like a vehicle for them to express their hate, right? There are Nigerians who hate South Africans. There are Nigerians who hate Ghanaians. There are South Africans who hate Nigerians, right? And I don't know if the way you go about it is actually just reaching the hateful people. I have no idea. Right? The thing you said just now about most places where Nigerians are at, they're doing well, blah, blah. I think that's quite inconsequential. I also don't have evidence of that, but it doesn't matter to me. It actually doesn't matter. Most places Zimbabweans go, they're doing well, or most places South Africans go, they do. I don't care about that. I really care about how people are treated wherever they go, right? Italy right now has a huge problem with immigration and attitudes towards immigrants. If you look black or brown, you're treated quite poorly. It's happening in Ireland as well. I suppose what I'm circling back to is however we have this conversation, we also need to find out if we're having it with the right people, right? Because lest you end up with Nigerian viewers who come out of the conversation having deep rooted negative stereotypes of South Africa, for example, right? Or lest you have South Africans come out of that conversation with deep rooted stereotypes that are negative about Nigerians. So that's sort of my concern with how we communicate with each other. Look, I've visited Nigeria. Right? I had a very decent time. My biggest complaint was like the heat. but other than that, if I think about Nigeria as a society, I get concerned about things like the level of corruption on the ground, like the everyday bribes that happen. And now I'm starting to see it in South Africa, right? The everyday corruption, the bribes that happen every day in South Africa, right? And when it gets me thinking, I think about like emerging or developing economies where this is rife anyway, right? At some point, we have to deal with us being human, I guess. So that's just a point I wanted to make about how we communicate to each other and are we even like talking to the right people and the consequences of that.
All right. Good or bad is subjective. I'm sure you agree. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. You see, you can call this man a terrorist today, but to somebody else is a freedom fighter. So what you see as being bad might actually not be bad, might actually be good from another perspective. Maybe I'll consider toning it down a little bit. The first part of my plan was to get people talking. And if you see the comment section under my videos, I don't recommend anymore because I don't want depression. So the comment section of my videos are so beautiful. I get called all manners of names. I see my parents get insulted. I get insulted because of my age, calling me grandpa and all those. So these are the people I'm trying to attract. And I'm doing a really good job attracting them because I could get up to like 2,000, 3,000 comments on a video and 95% will be insults. Now, most of my viewers are South Africans, according to TikTok logistics, statistics. Most of my viewers are South Africans, 95% of them. And I believe I'm reaching the right people. Now, for me to say South Africans, Chidinma was being persecuted at the highest level of government. And I think the issue was being politicized because the DA, which supplied the current Home Affairs, Schreiber, the DA believe that 70% of their voters or 80% of their voters are Black South Africans and they're xenophobic. So the best thing to do is to act as if they're also against foreigners. Because all this time, when the Home Affairs were coming up with their allegations and everything, the first time was before Chidinma, a week before the Miss South Africa competition. And now they are coming up that they are laying charges on a girl that never knew anything about crimes, apparent crimes, in quote, her parents might have committed. I'm not saying identity theft is good, but Chidinma was a baby then. She never knew anything about it, but they are laying charges against her. So they are politicizing the whole issue. And for me to address South Africa, because people like Kenny Kunene and Katie McKenzie, they're very popular South African politicians. And they're talking about these things in a manner that rallies a lot of xenophobes against Nigerians and against other foreigners. So if I address South Africa as a nation, I think it's right for me to do that because on the highest level of government, we as foreigners, we are receiving hate. So I think it was right for me to do that, yeah.
I don't know if you should tone it down. Hey, I mean that's up to you. I don't know if you should. I'm really like just curious at that kind of engagement and what fuels it. I do have a question that's a little bit closer to you, to home for you now that I'm thinking about. A lot of these conversations, these discussions that we're having, end up with people going things like, "Oh, but not all Nigerians," or "Oh, not all South Africans are xenophobic." And it all gets recycled. Right? Um, but I hardly ever hear in these conversations people asking about each other and their lived experiences, right? What I want to ask you is, for someone who's never been to Nigeria, for someone who's never lived in Nigeria, or had like just like, I don't know, a couple of weeks living in Nigeria, feeling, experiencing Nigeria, in how would you describe Nigeria to them? By the way, I'm talking about a regular person, not like some rich guy who's gonna come and
All
rent
right, all right, all
expensive
right,
cars.
all right, all right. That's a good question. Okay, let me describe Nigeria to you. So I will take it that you are the person that I'm describing Nigeria to. So Nigeria is a vibrant nation of over 200 million people. Okay, and it's a nation of many many faces. We have more than 200 tribes merged in one country, more than 200 tribes, and we have more than 200 languages in one country. English is the official language. We have three major languages: Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba. Nigeria is one of the richest countries in the world potentially. If you look at our oil export, where Nigeria is one of the largest oil exporters on the planet, and Nigeria is also one of the largest exporters of labor on the planet. And Nigeria is a lovely country. We have our own problems here. We have problems with bad leadership and insecurity here and there. But in the main and largely, Nigeria is a beautiful place consisting of over 30 states and very modern cities. Yeah. So anybody that's coming to Nigeria for the first time will enjoy the nightlife. In fact, Lagos has been rated, I think, the fourth or fifth best city for night enjoyment and night gallivanting. So Nigeria is a lovely place, and we have beautiful women and lovely food.
How different is life in the north, for example, if in Nigeria? How different is that from like being in Lagos, like urban city center Lagos?
How different is life in the north to life in other parts of Nigeria? Is that what you're asking?
How different is it to Lagos?
The northern part of Nigeria recently has been plagued with a bit of insecurity. And that is what a lot of people like to talk about, Boko Haram and all that. We used to have incidents where students were kidnapped and abducted for years and all that. Very, very bad. That attracted a lot of international attention. And we're dealing with the situation. We've dealt with it. The North is calmer now. The current administration has acquired a lot of military hardware, and they are dealing with the situation. And Northerners are very wonderful people. And it's an Islamic concentrated area. Most Northerners are Muslims, and also it's a welcoming place. It's a kind of place that you can go to and you feel welcome, you see, and it's quieter, if not for the insecurity. And they also have good food as well. You see, different parts of Nigeria have different culture and different food and different orientation. And the level of education in the north is not as much as in the south. But the north in the main is not a bad place to visit.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in Abuja, I found it, like you say, like very, like much quieter. Okay, so in that context, and I'm gonna circle back to where the conversation started. In that context, as a regular Nigerian, I don't know if you have children or anything like that, and as an educator, what gets you concerned? What worries you to the point of I might need to leave this country? What's that reality?
All right, I'll be frank with you here. Look at the exchange rate of the naira to the dollar and other currencies. Our economy is being badly managed. I accept that. In fact, but migration has been part of humanity since the foundation of the world. Migration has always been there. Even birds migrate from places where they will find better atmospheric temperature and weather. They migrate from places where the weather is harsher to places where they can find food, where they can find good weather and all that. So migration is part of yeah. So even we have a lot of South Africans migrating lately as well. I mean, if you look at white South Africans, you find them in Australia, New Zealand, the UK, Ireland. Black South Africans, you find them in Ireland, Middle East. You'll find a lot of them in Nigeria as well, more than 16,000 South Africans. So people migrate. Even Americans migrate. So it has nothing to do. So, but okay, migration in Nigeria is largely being, has more to do with the economy. Because we're a nation of 200 million people, there's limited resources, limited opportunities, and there's a lot of corruption going on that an average Nigerian does not have access to the basic things they need. That is true. I agree with that. Our wealth as a nation is being used to benefit the political class and does not move around to benefit the average Nigerian. That's why Nigerians say, okay, let me go somewhere else where I can find opportunity, where there's less competition, and where I can make money and come back home and establish something. That is why Nigerians travel. Thank you.
I wanted to go back to that rhetoric again, but also like in a way to move forward, because I actually think there's something that we are talking about here that's really important to talk about within the African context. Specifically, if we look at conversations that look at Africans comparing themselves and Africans stating that they are better than other Africans, or they are better than other people, or better than people within different tribal affiliations. And the fact that you have an audience of people who are fueled by that also evidences that this is a conversation that we are having, but also external to your channel. It's happening with Amapiano and Nigerian music and all these things that people just put a flag on, and even comparing celebrities or anything of that sort. So my question is, and my statement would be, why is that so important for Africans? Why do we find it so important to compare ourselves with other people, but also pervade that we are superior than other African people? You know, I never thought of myself as saying like the statement that you said, like Zimbabweans always do well wherever they go. But I know a lot of people also speak like that. But why do you think it's important, and why do you think it has become so dominant within the African space? I'm not only referring to your channel, but I'm just referring to Africans in general who are also coming to your channel and saying, this is a conversation that we want. We want to talk about this because we are better. No, you are not better. Why has that become so rife and important?
Well, I'm not saying it's important. It's not important to compare, but sometimes it's necessary to compare. It's not important to compare, but sometimes it's necessary. That is when at your place of work, sometimes you have something like employee of the year, employee of the month, employee of the week, because they compare the output of different employees and their contribution to the organization, and they're able to say, oh, you did better this way, you did better this year, you did better last year. You see, that is comparison. Comparison sometimes is important. So we had a situation where a lot of South Africans believe that other Africans live in the jungle. In fact, it got to a point where a South African said that South Africa is not Africa. South Africa is different. When we leave South Africa and go to other Africans, we are going to underdeveloped countries. So that's comparison. So in order, comparison can serve as a form of education. Because if we put the facts out there, this is your GDP of South Africa. This is the GDP of white South Africans. This is the GDP of black South Africans, which cannot even compare to the GDP of Sao Tome and Principe, or the GDP of Togo or Republic of Benin, the GDP of black South Africans. So sometimes the comparison is necessary, okay? So that we can all know where we stand, then we can build from there. But in a situation whereby you think you are better than anybody else because you are South African, that is where I have a problem. Because we see a lot of South African politicians as well flaming these fires of xenophobia, claiming that, oh, these people that have talk shops, why can't they start talk shops in their own country? Coming up with demonizing foreigners, so that, and somebody was even justifying looting. Say, as long as these people don't pay taxes, we're entitled to whatever they have in there. Does two wrongs make a right? Do two wrongs make a right? No. So sometimes it's necessary to let people know the extent at which they are important. That is where the comparison comes in. So when we compare and you find out that you are not as important as you think you are, then we can start a meaningful conversation from there. Not with you thinking that you are higher than everybody else. That is where the comparison is important.
I think I
I
think yeah
really, I
I think you're making sense there. I also think it applies to everybody, right? Whether you're from Nigeria or South Africa.
I really hate to disagree. Like, sorry, Tabis, I really hate to disagree because I think it seems a bit contradictory, at least from the way that I'm hearing it. Because if we compare with each other and if we see that a person is better than the other, then xenophobia would make sense. Chidima's case would make sense. All of these things that we are talking about that are negative, they would make sense. Because if I compare myself with you and I feel like I'm better, I would want to tell you or find evidence in the stereotypes to say I'm better than you because you are a scammer or everybody else says this, you know. I think it fuels the things that we are trying to get rid of within the African context, but also it delays the conversation because the moment that that I'm fighting to prove to you that I'm better, we are not starting the conversation, or we will not even get to the conversation because I just want to make sure that I get rid of you. And because I don't even see you as human, I start to dehumanize you. I start to paint you as an other who doesn't even belong. But also it justifies this conversation of, oh, if you are better, so why are you in my country? Because it's this comparison thing that we are doing, you know. And people start to say, oh, but my country is good, my country is better, which is what has become the triggering aspect, but also the toxic aspect of blackness and black relations within the African context, at least according to how I see it. So do you see why, like looking at the conclusion that you reach when you say, why do South Africans why do South Africans hate Nigerians, right? The conclusion is natural if we are comparing ourselves. So comparing ourselves only leads to that, and it's a natural space to breed that. That's how I'm hearing it. Sorry, Tabitha, I cut you off because I just wanted to respond to that part.
Ade, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, the World Bank and other um, organizations of global importance, they come up with data every year. They will come up with, oh, this country has the GDP of so 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 so. This country is the largest economy in Africa, which South Africa is right now. This country is the safest country on the planet. This country, so there will always be comparison. Even from the days of old, there has always been comparison between, if you are spiritually inclined, if you're religiously inclined, there will be prophets comparing themselves with themselves. So comparison is not something we can eradicate.
But those are performance metrics. But those are performance metrics. It's not to say this country is better than. It's not like, even if we go to school or anything, right? They can say this person had more marks than the other, but they don't say this student is better than this person, which breeds the animosity. We can know that as Africa. So when are we going to get together as Africans? If GDP means that this country is doing better than this one, I think of them as performance metrics rather than comparison metrics to say you are doing better than me or you are not doing worse than me. I don't know.
So when you were in school and the teacher gives you a report card and said, okay, you've come forth this term, how do you feel about the person that came first?
I felt like they performed better than me, but they're not better than me as a person.
Aha. So in study, that's still comparison. That's being compared to another person educationally. Oh, see,
Yeah, but not
comparison will
as a
always be there.
person. But wait, not as a person. There's a difference between how you're doing, let's say, how you're doing as a person, sorry, your performance versus the value of you as a person. So you get 50 more than me. That doesn't mean your value as a human being is more important than mine. So the
Hmm.
thing about comparison that you're talking about, I was saying it's making sense, right? Because I do think I still stand by it. That I think I get why you're doing it the way you are. I think it's making sense to you and clearly to maybe to the audience. But it also reminds me of something.
Hmm.
Hendrik Verwoerd was basically the guy, the author of apartheid in South Africa. Right? I can't emphasize this enough. He would love, if he were alive, he would love this. Anything that has to do with black people saying, we perform better than you, we're better than these other black people, we're better than these other people. It's because the version of that in South Africa that happens to this day was, if you think about Igbo speaking people versus Yoruba speaking people, if Yoruba people were saying, yeah, generally we're better than these guys, or we behave better than the Igbo people, that's what was happening in South Africa. And
Mm.
that was very central to the development of apartheid, because they called it separate development, right? You guys are so different that you should live on your own over there and
Mm.
develop by yourselves, right? And we're better, so we'll be here and develop by ourselves, right? And I think that's what Ivan is referring to. That's the kind of thing that it fuels, right? So in a way, you remind me a little bit of apartheid.
Ouch! Ouch!
I
That
didn't expect
stings. That
that.
stings. That stings.
But
Well,
it's
well,
just a joke. But I think
yeah, I know, I
the
know.
point
But
stands
I get
about
your point.
comparison. Yeah.
But I actually do get your point. Okay, I actually do get your point. Like I said earlier, discovery is the first step to recovery. Like we in South Africa, we kept when I was there, we kept being called quere quere. That is South Africans feeling they are better. We get called magrigamba. That is South Africa. It's an just a quere quere. Like you want to marry a South African woman, the family will go like, why do you want to marry a Nigerian? Nigerian. That is them feeling that they are better. A Nigerian is not worth marrying their daughter. So this thing will always be there. We can't stop the comparison. But what we can do is to concentrate in areas which we are performing better and merge everything together. That is why when a woman and a man comes together to marry each other, the woman is better in a certain area, the man is better in a certain area, and they combine forces together and make a family. Yeah. The same thing when we're asking or advocating for African unity. Nigeria is better in a certain area, maybe human capital or something. South Africa is better in a certain area, maybe the most industrialized country in Africa. Malawi is better in a certain area, maybe the most peaceful country in Africa. Namibia is better in a certain area. So we can combine all those strengths and use it for the better good for the greater good of Africa. But we cannot stop countries bragging about what they are better at. Nigeria, the Nigerian movie industry is better than every other African movie industry. At least looking at how much they make every year, it's a fact. It's not comparison. Huh? Nigerian music industry is more popular globally right now. Afrobeat is the most important genre right now. That's the fact. That's not comparison. Okay.
Okay,
So if we put all
so
those
that
together,
so that tone. So you see, I'd like to give an example of the video that you have, the Makwere Kwere video that you have. I think it's the same thing that you did within this part of the conversation, and I agree with you. Words like amagrigamba, kwere kwere, they actually have animalistic qualities that serve to dehumanize people. So it serves to say that I'm better than you, but also you're also not human. So I can treat you in a negative way because you're not a human and you shouldn't be in a space that I occupy. Right? But at the end of the video, that's where you lost me. In the same way that you took this conversation, like that's where you lost me at the end of the video, because you said the people that they call kwere kwere, the people that they call grigambas, are better looking than them, are more intelligent than them, and all of that. It's like you are just reversing that whole thing that they are doing, So for me, that's where I get lost, because as much as I have been dehumanized in different spaces, but I don't think that I'm better than South Africans. I don't think that I'm more intelligent than South Africans. I might look better than a few, but that's not the point. I just feel like we can't rate ourselves that way, because once you start the conversation of saying the Nigerian movie industry is the best, and what's this music that you spoke about? What's the Nigerian music? Afrobeats is the best in Africa, right? We have lost
popular. I don't say it's the best. I say it's the most popular.
It's the most. We have lost the plot because we are on Twitter already. Like that's the same thing that people on Twitter are doing. They are not even having the conversation. They just want to have clicks, and they just want to clickbait people into saying, "Oh, it's actually not better. This is actually better. This person is better." But a more progressive thing is, oh, there is progress that is being made in this music industry. This artist is doing really well, and giving those artists their flowers in terms of their performance. Because the next thing is like, Burna Boy wants to come to South Africa, and people and South Africans are like, oh, you're not better than South Africans, which defeats the whole point of Africans and Africa moving together as one unit.
Everybody has their own strengths and weaknesses, just like every country has its own strengths and weaknesses. So if I'm talking about my own strength, okay, it doesn't mean I'm undermining your own whatever you claim to have. It doesn't mean I'm undermining you. But I am talking at this point, by mentioning Afrobeat, I'm talking about the strength of Nigeria. By mentioning Nollywood, I'm talking about the strength of Nigeria. By mentioning our population, I'm talking about the strength of Nigeria. South Africa is basically one of the largest diamond exporters on the planet. That's your strength. I don't have to dim my light for you to shine. No country has to dim their light for another country to shine. We can have a progressive conversation while emphasizing on our strengths. So emphasizing on my strength is not, might be seen as arrogance or comparison, but that's not what I'm doing. I'm just telling you the areas in which I think I'm doing way better. And that is the same thing IMF, World Bank, and other organization of global relevance, that is what they do. I'm not doing anything way more than that. Okay? So the fact of the matter is, if you are religious, I would say in front of God, every human being is equal. Yeah? But when we are looking at statistics and certain things we have achieved over the years, we are doing better than one another in certain areas. So if I choose to emphasize on the areas in which I'm doing better, I'm not stopping you from emphasizing on the areas. Maybe it's even good for my self-esteem. So I'm not stopping you from emphasizing the areas in which you are better.
Do you think earlier you were saying that each country, you made all the examples, right? Malawi, Namibia, etc. Um, and you said we should be getting our strengths, bringing our strengths together, is what you said. Right? Um, do you think the way you're going about it on TikTok is helping that?
Fantastic. Now, if you looked at some of my other videos, okay, I advocated for African unity. But the first thing, most South Africans will say, once Africans unite, they will open the borders and everybody will be trooping here. So an average South African believes that we want African unity so that we can all come to South Africa. And that is something we need to change that narrative.
Sorry, I just need to point out, I don't know if the average South African thinks that. I just need to point that out. I don't know.
A lot of South Africans, let me say that. A lot of South Africans, okay? Let me not generalize. Because I've seen situations where I will talk about African unity, and a lot of South Africans will comment on, then go and unite in your own country. Why can't you unite in your own country first? We don't want to unite. We are fine as we are. In fact, what I'm saying in general is that before unity can be achieved, there has to be a level playground. So in a situation whereby one country feels like they're on top of the world, where the others are just like garbage dumps, we have to bring them down. Say, no, you are not as good as you think you are. We are all struggling in Africa. We are all struggling in Africa. Even as South Africans, you are struggling. In Nigeria, we are struggling. So, but if you think you are better than Nigerians, that's what I'm addressing. That is why I'm putting the facts out there, that there are certain areas in which Nigerians are doing better.
Ade, what do you have to say to I've seen this, I've seen people say this, and I want to pose it to you. What do you have to say? Context is South Africa does have an immigration problem, right? We can't get away from that. We've got an illegal immigration problem. So the borders are problematic in South Africa, and much of that informs what you're talking about for people. What do you have to say when people say, like you're saying, we all have our problems. South Africa has its own problems. When people respond to that by saying, yes, we have our own problems, so leave us alone to fix our problems, stay out of the country. What do you have to say? What's your response when people say something like that?
I always tell them, I've heard those kind of statements before. And I always tell them that as we have Nigerians in South Africa, we have more than 16,000 South Africans in Nigeria. They've never for one day been called kwere. They've never for one day been blamed for Nigerian economic problems. They've never, you know how much South African companies repatriate to South Africa every year? In the billions of dollars. Money made from Nigeria.
This is important. Are these legal or illegal immigrants you're talking about, the 16,000?
No, I'm talking about, I'm talking about legal South Africans. Legal. Okay? But the fact still remains that we have South Africans and Nigerians in Nigeria that are repatriating billions of dollars to South Africa every year. We never for once gave them any issue. Now, to most South Africans, a white immigrant, to most Black South Africans, a white immigrant, if he doesn't have papers, it doesn't matter as long as he's white. But an immigrant from Africa, okay, for them, for a lot of South Africans, illegal immigrant is if you are from Africa. It doesn't matter whether you have papers or not. It's something I've experienced many times. You have immigration problems. So do we. We have more than 60 million immigrants staying in Nigeria. We have immigration problems as well. But we don't attack a particular group because one of them committed a crime, so we call all of them criminals. We don't do that. We don't demonize people in Nigeria. We don't do that. So the fact of the matter is, you fix your immigration problem, but we don't have to stay out of South Africa for you to fix your immigration problem. The moment you say all Nigerians must leave South Africa, then all South Africans must leave Nigeria as well. Things don't work that way. Every country has its own problem, but we accommodate one another as brothers. So I'm saying the criminal elements that are there should be arrested, should be prosecuted, but not Nigerians should not be painted with the same brush. That's my own.
I think two things that are standing out for me. I think there is this particular space where you said, if someone thinks they are superior, I'll pull them down. You know, it made me think of this statement that I don't know. There was a movie that says, "Don't argue with a fool because they'll drag you down to their level, and then they'll beat you with experience." I'm not referring to anyone as a fool, but I'm just thinking of that. Yeah, I'm just thinking of that dynamic of dragging each other down and that. But also, you know, Coach, I think there is. I think.
Sorry to bad you.
No, it's fine.
Sorry to bad you. I need to correct something. I'm not saying. I'm not talking about dragging people down. I'm talking about letting them understand where they actually stand instead of them pretending to be better than everybody. I'm not talking about dragging people that are up there down. I'm talking about people that have exalted themselves without any empirical evidence to show their superiority. I'm talking about putting them on a normal play level so that we can all relate. Letting you realize that these are the facts. You are not who you say you are. These are the facts.
And this is
that is how we can have a meaningful conversation.
And this is why I say, like, I love the fact that you're setting up and that's why I'm enjoying this conversation as well. But I think there are parts where it's almost like I agree with you, and then there's like an off-ramp where we just separate ways, you know, because I think part of the dynamics that I'm Zimbabwean, right? And so, like, when I think of migration within the South African context, I think of the fact that South Africa's population is about 50 million. And the problem is that the migrants in South Africa are like 500 million. Is it not 500 million? 500,000. Huh? About 10% of the population, right? And I'm just thinking South Africa, the rate at which it's sucking migrants from Africa, and specifically the SADC region, is of greater proportion to what is happening, for example, in Nigeria. And that also opens up the floor for that conversation. So I will not, I do not disagree that the conversation must be had. And I also understand that if other things are not sorted out in South Africa, like things like corruption, things like poverty, unemployment, if they are not sorted out in South Africa, the conversation will still become an imminent problem within the South African context. So as much as I don't agree with people having the conversation of go back home or people do not belong here, I understand why the conversation is being had. Does that make sense? I understand why people are aggravated to that point. So one of the things that doesn't work for me is if you do me, I do you, that kind of argument or kind of attitude, because when you're saying that also if they can say this is Nigerians are like this, then I'll also show you that you are bad in this characteristic. I think it doesn't get us to end that conversation, but it just adds layers of difference that make us drift more apart than come together and work together. That's where I'm saying I start to have a problem, because we start off the journey and the conversation together, but all of a sudden, I think when you are ignited by South Africans, the same way South Africans ignite Nigerians, and then it just becomes a wildfire of argument that's not really taking us further.
Yeah, well, we're allowed, we don't have to agree on the same things, and our conversations don't have to follow the same direction, but we can still agree to disagree. And we can still, you see, the beauty of democracy is that we can have varying opinions, okay? And we can still be friends, you see? So, so I have my way of doing things, yeah? I was not on TikTok before, and I wasn't pushing out contents before until I felt I needed to defend a black African child that was being harassed and bullied into forsaking her dreams to become Miss South Africa. And I think I'm doing a good job at it. I've been able to educate a number of people, and some people also are no longer listening to me because they think I'm full of hate, which is not true. My best friends are South African, and when I was there, I used to have a South African girlfriend as well. So, and a Sutu lady, and she stopped talking to me as a result of this Chidinma issue, because she didn't like she was not mature enough to handle the fact that we can have varying opinions and we can still relate. So, and as a result, I said, okay, if that's what you want to do, it's fine, but I'm not going to stop my content because you don't agree with me. So I'm just saying, we have different way of doing things. You're a calmer guy. You have your own way of approaching issues. I'm a hot-headed guy. I have my own ways of approaching issues. So we always agree to disagree. But at the end of the day, we are still human beings. We have good characteristics and bad characteristics in all of us. So that's
I do think that if I hope in the future we can have a conversation about whiteness in Africa, in the different countries. I mean, you kept referring to it, but obviously it wasn't like the theme today. But I hope we can get to tackle that someday, man. It's I think it's one that we need to talk about.
All right.
Yeah.
Another time.
Yeah, and on that note of agreeing to disagree, I really loved this conversation and I really enjoyed every part of the conversation. And Coach Ade, the reason why you are here is not because we don't agree with you or anything, but we both think that you're contributing something to the conversation, and every time that we see your posts, we're like, there's something to take away there. And I know we didn't even have time to talk about the new Mexican content station that is happening with Chidinma currently, and that's something that also we would want to talk about. But also, I've been seeing in your post as something that's really positive, and that's one of the things that where we agree as well. But I also want us to be talking about whiteness sometime in the future, but we are grateful for you coming to the show, and we hope that from here you become a friend of the show, even in moments that where we disagree, and we are really grateful to be having you. And thanks for everybody who was watching this episode. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast and comment, and also go and follow Coach Ade on TikTok and watch his content and comment on his content. Thank you so much, Coach.
I was saying I'm gonna binge watch your stuff now, and like I said earlier, I'm not sure if you should tone it down. I think you've got a vision going on there. I did have a question for you that I meant to ask you. Um,
Okay.
as you go on with this, and as you're engaging with different people, and like you said, for example, you have South Africans in who join the lives and so on. Um, if everything goes according to plan, and what's what's the goal? What should happen ideally? What will make you happy?
The goal is for respect, mutual respect, mutual respect. By highlighting that you also have problems in South Africa and you accept it, and we accept our own problem. So how can we team up as Africans and address these issues? So as long as you still feel that you're better, there will always be that issue where we cannot relate mutually. So the goal is mutual respect. Respect us as Nigerians, we get to respect you as South Africans. And we know that we are strong in different areas and we are weak in different areas. So where you are weak as South Africans, we Nigerians might be strong. Where we are weak as Nigerians, you South Africans might be stronger. So when we work together, we can work towards the common goal of Africa. So the goal is for mutual respect to happen. But mutual respect can't happen unless we are on a level playing ground and we start to address each other.
Time that you lived in South Africa up until now, you're back in Nigeria. Have you seen any signs of this mutual respect?
I think there's a bit of tension that is going on between both nations, not at a diplomatic level, okay, but between the citizenry to a large extent, okay. But with a lot of lives going on, a lot of TikTok lives going on, people are they're beginning to understand one another better. I was telling you that I had a live discussion with some other people, and at the end of the day, after shouting and arguing, now we all accepted that we are being manipulated by the whites, actually. They have taken like 80% of the resources, and they're informing us, Nigerians and South Africans, that the remaining 20% fight for it. You know, like they're informing immigrants in South Africa that Nigerians are taking your jobs, where the Nigerians are taking your resources, where they have already taken 80% of the resources, and they're letting us fight over the remaining 20%. So we'll get to a level whereby we begin to address those particular issues. Like when South Africans say Nigerians are taking their jobs, what jobs? Are we talking about waitering jobs? Are we talking about low-level jobs? But the high-level ones are being occupied mostly by the whites, who earn 3 times what the blacks are earning. So I think the problem is not between us. The problem is with us, the problem is them trying to manipulate us as black people. So mutual respect is growing. We are not there yet, but we'll get there, where we know that you can't address me anyhow. I can't address you anyhow, because it will become a vicious cycle. So if we learn that and we accept that, we can start having meaningful engagement and meaningful and respectful conversations. Yeah.
I like the fact that, Coach, you are agreeing with us so much, although agreed we agreed to disagree. You know, the route of getting to the point might be different, but we are getting to the same point where we are talking about mutual respect. But also in that mutual respect, I believe it's a continual process where, for me, it's as much as for me, I believe in engaging. So if someone says people must go home, I resort to asking to why. Can you explain to me the context within which you are arriving at this discourse or at this rhetoric from, so that I get to understand that as well, and they get to understand my point as well, because we also receive that feedback that's bad, you know. But also I think something that I agree with you on is this assertion of what you're saying. I think the person who's a problem, or the people who are a problem in this whole dynamic, is someone who convinced poor people that the poor people are the problem for your poverty within the African context. That's where the problem and the manipulation that you're talking about is, because someone did an amazing job of convincing poor people that other poor people are the reason for their poverty, while that person is busy chowing the money and chowing the resources as well. But like Tabiso said as well, it's a conversation that we need to pick up in terms of talking about whiteness and talking about how whiteness has contributed to the, not only to the position that we are in, but also what the future of Africa really looks like in post-colonial terms as well. So definitely you're going to be someone we're going to have on the podcast again. I really enjoyed this shooting, and I really enjoyed this conversation, although there are catalogs of things that we didn't finish. I know time is of the essence as well, but we'll definitely continue.
Another time.
Yeah, because time is we still have to open another can. So thank you so much, Coach Ade, and thank you so much, Tabiso, for the conversation. I think this is us signing out for now, and till next time, enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers, guys.